Welcome, everyone. I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. I'm always happy to see you and so thankful you can join me today for our program. Let's get started. Some of the world's greatest art depicts life on a farm. We're going to look at a lot of those works, talk about our experiences with farms, and hear some fun facts about farms. We'll even see some interesting farms from around the world. But first, I would like to thank Right at Home Boston and North for sponsoring this program. Their mission has always been to improve the quality of life for the seniors and adults they serve. And providing some enrichment and entertainment with programs like this definitely helps fulfill that mission. And thanks to AgeSpan, who hosts us. This year, they're marking over 51 years of providing the services people need so they can live safe, healthy lives at home in the community of their choice. Agriculture has been an art subject for more than 10,000 years, from images on cave walls to Grandma Moses painting the rural scenes of her childhood. Full disclosure here, I am not a farm girl, but I love animals and love working in my garden. But my daughter and her husband live on 10 acres in rural Virginia with their 4 little children, and they have chickens and dogs and cats and a huge vegetable garden. So I play farmer when I visit them sometimes. We enjoy visiting the big animals at local farms. The kids are used to seeing lots of horses and cows and tall corn in the fields around them. This vivid depiction of a wild pig, outlined and filled in with a mulberry-hued pigment, dates back at least 45,000 years, making it the oldest figurative art found to this date. It resembles the warty pig, which is a species still living today on the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia. Those people who lived 45,000 years ago aren't the only ones interested in pigs. Jamie Wyeth comes from a generational art family. He painted this portrait of a pig in 1970. And of all the animals found on farms, George Morland appears to have had the strongest feelings for pigs. In 1793, he painted what shows a Gloucestershire old spot, a sow asleep with 3 of her well-grown piglets. This breed is predominantly white with black spots or patches. It was popular throughout Britain for a long time, but now is considered to be critically endangered. Here's another Gloucestershire old spot by James Ward. So you get an idea of just how popular this pig was. And this also gives you a sense of just how massive pigs of this breed can become. This adult probably weighed in excess of 500 pounds. And we could call it a massive porker. On the left here in the distance, we can see the farmer, what may be his daughter, and some little piglets. But clearly, Mama Pig here is the star of the show. Ludwig Noss painted Mud Pies in 1873, which shows a group of children in the evening near Dusseldorf, Germany. I wonder how their parents felt when they walked through the door that evening. Okay, you might be wondering, why the heck is Siobhan showing us all of these pig pictures? Well, for one thing, I just think they're weirdly cute, but I'm also fascinated by the fact that they're one of the first animals that were domesticated by humans for farms. That happened around 8,000 years ago in East Asia. Now, for your viewing pleasure, I also have that picture again of the cave painting that was so old here on the left, and you can even see the handprints that somebody left in that cave 45,000 years ago, connecting us to those folks. On the right, you're seeing an actual warty wild pig. I can't imagine the moment where someone was being chased by a boar through a forest and thought, this would make a good farm animal. Did any of you grow up on a farm or have family like a grandparent who had a farm? Let's take a look now at some of the most famous farm paintings in history. Some of them may seem familiar to you. Has anyone seen this painting before? Grant Wood painted this during the Great Depression. It depicts a farmer standing beside his daughter. She's often mistakenly assumed to be his wife, but he wasn't actually a farmer in real life. It was the artist's dentist, and the woman was his sister. And this is the house that helped inspire the painting. Grant Wood was driving through Eldon, Iowa, and came upon this house, which he immediately sketched and photographed. The title of the painting, American Gothic, is inspired by this Gothic style window that you can see here. Now, here is his sister and dentist in real life standing next to the painting. I have to tell you that initially Iowans were furious at their depiction. They thought it portrayed them as pinched, grim-faced, puritanical Bible thumpers. Grant Wood protested, saying he had not painted a caricature, but rather his appreciation of them. The deepening of the Great Depression helped this painting gain popularity as people came to see it as a steadfast American pioneer spirit depiction, and it became wildly popular as it is today. The family farm occupies a central place in American identity. Many of the country's founders, including George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, extolled the virtues of farmers and farm life, and they had their own farms. This attitude permeated American culture from literature to journalism, and artists like Grant Wood, the same artist we just saw who did American Gothic, he helped to keep the vision of the farm alive. Let's look at this picture for a moment. What's going on in this picture? Yeah, you're seeing a farm with a lot of activity. Perhaps you noticed this man milking a cow first. The cow's contentedly munching on some delicious green grass or hay while he milks, and maybe you saw this boy walking down the dirt road, a little dog by his side, a stick in his hand. There are other children on the road, and a horse way in the background. Perhaps you noticed the wheel right near this dog. And maybe as your eye traveled in the back, you noticed that it was hilly land with the silo and the trees that are turning color. Maybe it's fall. And this big, beautiful white barn. The cleverly designed barn actually backs right up to the hill so that hay can be driven onto the second floor and then later pitched down to the livestock below. By the way, I thought it was interesting that this man milking the cow that we see on the right here is almost a direct duplicate from the man on the left. This is a painting by Thomas Hart Benton. By the way, this was a neighbor of his named Henry Look, who was milking his cow in Martha's Vineyard. And yet in the painting, Thomas Hart Benton clearly is placing it in another location, probably his beloved Midwest. This painting was from 1973, and Thomas Hart Benton, you might recognize his name because he was named after his great uncle, who was a 5-term senator. Mid-60s, his daughter joined a group of idealistic young people who wanted to try farming, perhaps inspired by Benton's paintings. Well, Thomas Hart Benton sold a painting and bought 281 acres of prime farmland in north central Kansas for them. He was exceedingly proud of the fact that they did well. By the way, that Benton family farm continues to thrive today with all sorts of events, including field trips for schools, summer camps, and more. It's time for some fun facts about farms. Agriculture and farming is the world's largest employer, employing more than half of the people in the world. In the US, it's a bit over 10%, almost 11%. In 2021, the U.S. had over 2 million farms, which average 445 acres each. Cattle are the biggest sector of U.S. agriculture. More farms in the U.S. is classified as beef cattle operations than any other type of farm. This was interesting to me. The average age of an American farmer is 58. Yay! And 99% of all U.S. farms are owned by individuals or family partnerships. Okay, I had to throw this one in there. Crayons are made from soybeans. The soybean oil from 1 bushel of soybeans will make more than 2,000 crayons. That is incredible. A lot of crayons. And for all you women out there, more power to you. Women now make up over 40% of today's farmers worldwide. In case you were wondering, Texas has the most farms of any state. This was a fun fact. In 1954, the number of tractors on farms surpassed the number of horses and mules for the first time. So how interesting that in your lifetime, that switch happened. As an artistic child growing up on a farm in the 1860s, Anna Mary Robertson used grass and berry juice in place of traditional art supplies. She left home and school at age 12 and served full-time as a live-in housekeeper for the next 15 years. She so admired the Currier and Ives prints hanging in one of the homes that her employers set her up with wax crayons and chalk, but her duties didn't leave her a lot of time for leisure activities. Free time was in even shorter supply after she married and gave birth to 10 children, only 5 of whom sadly survived past infancy. Her creative impulse at that point was confined to decorating household items, quilting, and embroidering gifts for family and friends. On the left here, you are looking at a patchwork quilt made by her that is now in a museum in Vermont. And in case you're wondering why and who Anna Mary Robertson is, you know her better as Grandma Moses. At the age of 77, widowed, retired, and suffering from arthritis that kept her from her accustomed household tasks, she again turned to painting. She painted youthful memories like quilting bees, haying, and the annual maple sugar harvest for subject matter. A pharmacy in New York exhibited some of her output, along with other local women's handicrafts. It didn't attract much attention until an art collector wandered in during his brief sojourn from Manhattan and bought them all. And soon after, Grandma Moses became a star. Here's a painting titled Sugarin' Off from 1943. This is the height of Grandma Moses's mature style. Her painting is almost like a quilt filled with little squares and bits of people and activity. People love this painting because of the complexity and all the action, and it happens to be the highest price ever for a Grandma Moses painting. This sold for $1.3 million in 2006, so I guess we're not the only ones who like farms. Let's take a look at some unique farms from around the world. When the Cumbre Vieja volcano in the Canary Islands blew a few years ago, the ash fell like hail and drifted like dust. It piled up and drifted in the wind, covering houses, farms, and forests. But that ash had all sorts of rich nutrients, which provided a perfect host for growing grapes. And these vineyards are known now for having some of the best grapes for wine production in the world. Floating farms in Myanmar, which you may also know as Burma, aspire to bring food to people that do not have direct or indirect access to fertile soil. So here they have created a base for these plants to grow by using water hyacinth plants, which have this natural spongy float, believe below each shiny leaf. It allows the plants to float on the water's surface. It creates these massive vegetation mats. So then sediments are piled onto these weird and wonderful mats, and they become floating islands of agriculture. Crops like eggplant, squash, and tomatoes are grown. I think this is gorgeous. It looks like a stained glass painting, doesn't it? Rice is a staple food for people around the planet. The Yunnan province in China is famous for holding the world's largest rice terraces. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, milk may be associated with cows, but female moose, which is the world's largest deer species, are in fact technically referred to as cows and produce excellent milk. So we're looking here at Kostroma Moose Farm, which is an experimental farm in Russia, where a herd of moose is kept primarily for milk production. The farm supplies the moose's milk to a nearby sanatorium. People working on farms has always been a popular subject. The Harvesters is an oil painting on wood completed by Peter Bruegel the Elder in 1565. As in many of his paintings, the focus is on peasants and their work. It doesn't have the religious themes that were common in landscapes works of the time. Some of the peasants are shown eating, while others, here's a group eating here, while others are working and harvesting wheat. We can see pears on the white cloth in front of the upright sitting woman who eats bread and cheese, while a figure in the tree on the far right, it's hard to see, but there's a little figure way up here in the tree, picks the pears. This painting shows a large number of activities representative of life in 16th century Northern Europe. The painting has been at the Metropolitan Museum of Art since 1919, and they call it the first modern landscape. The Gleaners is an oil painting by Jean-Francois Millet. This was painted in 1857, not 1957 like it says on the screen. It depicts 3 peasant women gleaning a field of stray stalks of wheat after the harvest. Gleaning is the act of collecting leftover crops from farmers' fields after they have been commercially harvested. It's a practice described in the Hebrew Bible that has become a legally enforced entitlement of the poor in a number of Christian kingdoms. So if you were very poor in France, for example, and the farmer had harvested the farm, you would be allowed to go onto the farm after the harvest to pick any little bits that were left. That was a legal right of yours. Very tough work, as you can imagine. The painting is famous for featuring in a sympathetic way what were then the lowest ranks of rural society. By the way, it was received pretty poorly by the French upper class. It made them uneasy about their status. They were pretty much afraid of another revolution, and some art critics compared it to the revolution. Vincent van Gogh made many paintings inspired by farming and peasants, including this beauty. We can see the man plowing the field here. Just lovely. He almost gets lost in those brush strokes, doesn't he? And what about barns? There are so many beautiful paintings of barns, like this one by Georgia O'Keeffe from 1926. It looks very modern, doesn't it? And this one by Edward Hopper. This is a barn in Vermont that is probably still standing there. But there's also this guy. There's someone named Scott Hagen who started painting on barns like this when he was 19 years old. He was a budding artist and he wanted to see how big he could scale his work. And so I asked my dad if I could paint something on his barn, he said. A few days later, that barn had the Ohio State Buckeyes logo, and Hagen scored a new job. His work attracted the attention of some state officials. They were about to start commemorating the Ohio bicentennial, the 200th birthday of Ohio, Hagen said. Now, this was back in 97, and they were going to do a bunch of billboards around the state. But they thought, why not do barns instead? So they hired him, and over the next several years, he painted 88 barns across Ohio with the bicentennial banner, one in every county of the state. How fun is that? Since then, he's painted barns with American flags, barns with quilt squares, barns with fast food logos, and barns with lots of history. I hope you enjoyed our show today. There's so much to say about farms, and I so much appreciate getting some time with you to talk about that. Many thanks again to our sponsor, Right at Home, and our host, AgeSpan. We appreciate you. Please reach out to them if you have any questions. And many thanks to you, my friends. I'm looking forward to seeing you again real soon. But until then, I wish you well and hope you have a great day. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, my friends. See you soon.